listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Happy Thursday evening, folks. This is Scotty Roberts. You're here listening to my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. Check out the schedule and enjoy the lineup that's over there. At the same time, come on over to my YouTube channel. Join the live chat going on right now during this program over at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And that will get you to the video simulcast of this program. You can also hit the join button over there and see 3 ways that you can become a member of my radio show channel. And so go check it out. See what's going on. Tonight, I have got just tonight and tomorrow night, and then I leave for Louisiana, and I'll be gone for a few days out there before I am all established to do this radio show. I might surprise myself and surprise us all, and we'll be ready to broadcast on Monday night, but I doubt it. Tuesday at the earliest, I think, maybe even Wednesday. So I'm going to be out there for a few months, and we'll be broadcasting from there and doing the show either live or recorded from out there. And so stay tuned for all that new twist to things. The set here is going to look a little different when I'm out there, too, because I'm not hauling all of this with me. I'm going out there to work for a buddy of mine for his company, and so I'll be out there for a few months. And so right now, tonight, we are here. We're in our standard mode of operation, and we're going to continue on with our series that we've been talking about. But first, I want to get into some other things. And remember when I've said a million times this show is not about politics? And when I do talk about something that you might go, oh, that's politics. It's not politics, it's current events. I want to ask you if you are a citizen of the United States. Now, I know we have lots of listeners who aren't. We have listeners from around the world to this show. And you can listen to this and you can take some interest in this when you hear this. Isn't the United States supposed to have been that grand experiment that started over 250 years ago that offered liberty and freedom and personal liberty and freedom such as has never existed before in a nation, a governmental setting? We are a republic. We are not a democracy. We are a republic that's a representative republic. And so we are a constitutionally limited representative form of a republic. Not a democracy. We have democracy, but we are not defined as a democracy. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. We are a constitutionally limited republic. And that constitution immediately had amendments to it in the first couple of decades after the document was written. And almost immediately, what was the first one? The freedom of speech. This is the ability to speak your mind. Now, freedom of speech comes with great responsibility as well. Here, let's look at what is the First Amendment. Let's see exactly what it says. The First Amendment says this: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That is the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. Now, what does that all mean? What does it mean to assemble peaceably, to petition your government, to have freedom of expression? It prohibits Congress from restricting the press, from the rights of individuals to speak freely. So what do we see going on in the United States right now? Right now we see an awful lot of kickback and backlash from the party that was out of power that now has power again. And that party is doing everything it can to silence anybody that they believe represented the previous president and his train of thought or his political ideology. Now, that, by First Amendment standards alone, is wrong. It's unconstitutional. However, they are trying to find ways to be able to color the way people are expressing their freedom of speech to be able to say, that's wrong because that's inciting violence or that's doing this. And now, granted, all of our laws, our constitutional amendments, all have to have laws, rules, and regulations that back them up. And so what we're seeing right now, and I bring this up because I saw this article this morning that I wanted to make mention of. And again, if you think this is politics, you're wrong. This isn't politics. While there are political games being played, if you are a citizen of this country or an observer of this country, you have interest in the United States, it would behoove you to observe what's going on right now, especially if you're a citizen, because while this involves politicking and people playing political games and engaging in political theater and so on, there are things going on right now that are working to prohibit your freedom of speech. And if you're on the side that is okay with diminishing the freedom of speech of people who supported Donald Trump, well, then you might not see a problem with this. However, what happens when that table turns and it comes around to you? And it says you cannot express your freedom of speech because we have found a way to make your freedom of speech fall out of line with the Constitution because we disagree with your political point of view. That's what's going on right now. That's why the big push to impeach Donald Trump, which he's been impeached by the House, which has the authority to impeach. But remember, that House is also overwhelmingly inhabited by one party, and it's the party that doesn't like Trump. Now, you had 10 Republicans that voted with them this time. That's all right. That's the way they think. They have the freedom to vote that way. But now what they're trying to push in the trial is that Donald Trump was inciting violence. And you can go look up all that stuff. You go look up, do a search and say, was Donald Trump inciting violence? Then look at the sites that come up in your searches. And you'll find you have to dig long and hard to find the sites that speak against that and say, no, he was not inciting violence. But by being able to impeach him, and they can't remove him from office, all they can do is say we will try and convict him to bolster our impeachment and maybe prevent him from running again if we can prove that he was inciting violence against our country, which is sedition. But that's not what he did. You can go through and you can look at it. I listed these out for a couple of people in social media posts. There are all these things Donald Trump said, which many times, even when he was speaking to the crowd, he said, go over to the Capitol building, let your voice be heard, but do it peaceably. Do it in order. Protest, but protest peacefully. And when he says fight and all of this, doesn't everybody say fight when they're a politician? We're going to fight for you. Go fight for your rights. Do they mean go take out somebody or attack the Capitol building? There have been many politicians who have called for people to protest on the steps of the Capitol, which is a great place to protest. Martin Luther King did it. Steps of the Capitol, steps of the Lincoln Memorial. These are places where large protests have usually taken place. Are they all violent and all hell-bent on destroying the country and the infrastructure of the country politically? No. So, go look at that stuff yourself. Where I'm heading with this is there's an article about Horowitz. The FBI comes dangerously close to criminalizing free speech by indicting a man who tweeted election memes ahead of time. And no, this crackdown is not being driven by a concern for security and a sense of justice. Now, we've all shared this unsettling premonition that the attack on free speech is not just coming from big tech, with the threat of censorship and censoring your words. You don't agree with our political ideology and we're a privately owned company, so you can't say what we say you can't say. And so there's censorship there. And by the way, before we go any further, I want to say, if a company that exists like a Facebook or a Twitter or YouTube or any of these so-called platforms out there that are giving platforms for people to talk and speak their mind and so on, you've signed an agreement tacitly, you agree to their terms, which maybe they knew this was coming, maybe they knew it, and maybe it wasn't, but they are saying because they are a privately owned company and people are defending them because they are a privately owned company that they can set their standards, which is true. That's the beauty of being in the United States. However, I would add this. If you are a company that enjoys the protections of the Constitution for the founders of your company, for the corporate officers of your company, for the people involved in your company, for the right for your company to be able to exist at all, is founded on constitutional law, and all law goes back to the Constitution, by the way, yet you deny constitutional rights to the people who are members on your privately owned platform, aren't you living a contradiction? Say, I exist because of the Constitution, but the Constitution doesn't apply to me when I make my rules. If I tell you you don't have freedom to say that, then you don't have freedom to say that. Then again, if you are a platform that is so huge, billions of members, and it can sway the electoral process by influencing the electoral process in this country, should you be able to claim, I'm just a private company that has rules, when the people you are censoring are generally those who disagree with you on an ideological level? So that is a problem, by the way, with big tech and with the threat of censorship. But now we're seeing it's coming from the government, and it's backed by criminal prosecution. We're watching the government arrest hundreds of people, not just for violence at the Capitol building, but for trespassing and negligible crimes at the Capitol, when many of them were there just let into the building by the police. There are videos that exist of this. They let people in. Come on in. They had one Capitol guard saying, come on in, do your thing. You know, I may not agree with your point of view, but you're welcome here. And they let them in. There were a few broken windows and stuff from the mobs that were outside, but that represents a very small number of the people who were there. Of the, they're saying, 50,000 that attended Trump's speech, over 1 million that were part of the crowd that went. He had a small handful of people, a small percentage point, under 1% of those people did anything like breaking a window or a door. And they were let in by the police. So we're seeing the billboards and the technology that's being used to hunt people down as the most violent Antifa rioters are never arrested. And no, this crackdown isn't being driven by concern for security and a sense of justice. It's confirmed that the government itself here in the United States is rapidly headed toward criminalizing the speech of Trump supporters. The government is treating Antifa's violence as if it were free speech, and our speech as Trump supporters like it's violence. What starts with bad behavior by some Trump supporters, while ignoring what the other side does, isn't going to end there, folks. And so you had better, if you're a citizen of this country, whether you hate Trump or love Trump, hate Trump supporters or love Trump supporters, or are even-keeled, you better take a stand against this, because if it affects one, it will affect all. So there was this bizarre headline from the Justice Department's office just yesterday, their public affairs office, and it caught my attention, and it raised the ire of a lot of conservatives in this country. It said social media influencer charged with election interference stemming from voter disinformation campaign. Now, read the headline of that's what the headline of the press release from the DOJ's Eastern District of New York said. Now, that seemed really odd to me because I've never seen such a vague and intangible charge. After years of sitting through daily press releases from the U.S. attorneys about espionage, trade theft, gang activity, and as I read further, my worst suspicions were absolutely confirmed. They said a Florida man was arrested this morning on charges of conspiring with others in advance of the 2016 U.S. presidential election. 2016. We're talking 4 years ago. In advance of the 2016 U.S. presidential election to use various social media platforms to disseminate misinformation designed to deprive individuals of their constitutional right to vote. Now, that's the charge. Now, that sounds pretty interesting. So the DOJ is finally going after election fraud? Did this guy throw out ballots or throw them in the trash, I mean by that? Or engage in mail-in fraud, like endless witnesses said in sworn affidavits and testimony before the legislatures from this last election? No! The DOJ isn't interested in tangible fraud that involves an action. In fact, it's investigating any DOJ official, Department of Justice official, who might have sought to investigate such fraud. It only prosecutes speech. Douglas Mackey, a.k.a. Ricky Vaughn, 31, of West Palm Beach, was taken into custody and charged with having exploited a social media platform to infringe one of the most basic and sacred rights guaranteed by the Constitution, the right to vote. According to Nicholas L. McQuaid, Acting Assistant Attorney General of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. Now, again, I was confused how someone can use their own speech to infringe upon the right of a voter and actually succeed in stealing a vote. So after several paragraphs of DOJ officials bloviating about constitutional rights to vote, they finally announce his crime, and here it is. According to the DOJ, as alleged in the complaint, between September 2016 and November 2016, we're talking 4 years ago, in the lead up to the November 8th, 2016 election, presidential election, Mackey conspired with others to use social media platforms, including Twitter, to disseminate fraudulent messages designed to encourage supporters of one of the presidential candidates, the candidate, to vote via text message or social media, a legally invalid method of voting. Wow, now there's a mouthful to unpack right there. Listen to this, folks. This standard would basically rope in half of the country, if the other half believes that what they're purporting on social media is fraudulent or misinformation. That's going to be the standard charge. Well, that's not what my candidate stands for. Oh, that's not what he's going to do. That's fraudulent and misleading. That's what this is tantamount to. The other half of the country always believes everything the other side is putting out is false information and is extremely dangerous. We'd all be in jail if that were the case. So how exactly did the person engage in fraud? This is what the DOJ said. For example, on November 1st, 2016, Mackey allegedly tweeted an image that featured an African-American woman standing in front of an African-Americans for the candidate sign. And the image included the following text: "Avoid the line, vote from home." Text candidate's first name to 59925. Vote for the candidate and be part of history. And so the fine print at the bottom of the image stated, must be 18 or older to vote. 1 vote per person, must be a legal citizen of the United States, voting by text, not available in Guam, Puerto Rico, Alaska, or Hawaii, paid for by the candidate for president 2016. So the tweet included the typed hashtags, GO, with the candidate's name, and another slogan frequently used by the candidate. On or about and before Election Day 2016, at least 4,900 unique telephone numbers texted candidate's first name or some derivative to the 59925 text number, which was used in multiple deceptive campaign images tweeted by the defendant and his co-conspirators. Now, folks, this is very scary. Not the alleged crime, but that the feds are going after such behavior while ignoring sworn allegations of mass fraud in this recent election. While what is alleged appears to be mean and spiteful, and at the end of the day, there's no way to actually steal a vote with this kind of subterfuge. Not unless someone thought that based on random internet tweets, they could vote via text message and without verifying anything thereafter, would have sent their text and then stayed home on Election Day because they thought they voted already. So by this standard, every governor who violated election law and actually facilitated the casting of ballots non-pursuant to law, meaning there are 5 states where the governors or the secretaries of state changed the election law without doing what the law called for, which was bringing it before the state legislature, they should all be actually considered facilitating the casting of ballots not pursuant to law, and they should be put in jail, according to this case going on right now. Now, there's some really distasteful ways people use their freedom of speech. We know that in this country, and sometimes in a serious way or sometimes in a joking way. But the First Amendment was not written to protect benign speech. To arrest only one side of the divide for social media memes at a time when officials are letting cities burn is very concerning. And it opens up this very slippery slope for the government to prosecute people for saying anything that the government believes is harmful. And we're running out of time in this first half. I didn't want to have to bring this into the second half, but I might. So, is it that hard to envision an FBI agent knocking on your door and saying, "You just wrote information telling people masks don't work and to stop wearing them. You're engaging in fraud and are an accessory to murder"? That's where this goes, folks. Believe it or not. So, we've got to come to an end of this first segment here. I do want to pick this up and wrap it up in a couple of minutes on the other side of this break. And then we'll jump into our topic for tonight on Gnosticism. So, guys, sit tight. We're going to be right back.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
Ladies and gentlemen and folks in general, welcome back to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. You can also come over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts, to watch the video simulcast of this show going on right now, along with the best part of the YouTube channel is the live chat room that's happening right now. So come on over, join the mess going on over there, the good mess. I use that in a positive way. And join the channel. Hit the join button. You'll see 3 ways you can become a member of the Intrepid radio program. And so that's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. All right, let's pick up where we left off. I was talking about freedom of speech and what is looking like something that could be, if it is not stopped and not kept in check constitutionally, represent a breach of the First Amendment of the Constitution by finding a mechanism by which you can claim that somebody who exercised their freedom of speech, whether it was right or wrong what they said, whether it was information or disinformation or misinformation, that you cannot violate their First Amendment right. The Constitution guarantees them the right to say things, even if they're wrong. The Constitution doesn't even guarantee it if it's right or wrong. You know why? Because you have to look then to who is going to be the advocate as to whether or not what's being said in free speech and expressed is right or wrong. Which side is going to make that determination? So, it's not hard to envision, as I ended with, the FBI coming to your door and saying, you put up some misinformation about the wearing of masks during COVID, or the way the former president would do this, or the new president will do that. You know, I put up a lot of posts on my social media that have to do with some of the politics that we're watching going on around us. You could have a lot of people from the other side of the political camp say, I'm putting up misinformation. Now, under this precedent being set, you can be arrested for putting up information that one side of the argument deems as misinformation. And you could be arrested for that and tried for that. That is not what our Constitution guarantees. It guarantees that you have a right to freedom of expression. Now, if you don't believe me, and by the way, it also guarantees it for the press. Have you read anything in the press that you think is malfeasance or misleading or misinformation or opinion? Opinion can be the biggest form of misinformation for one side of an equation. Should the press all be shut down then? Or are they allowed to do what they do by virtue of the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States? Now, if you don't believe me that this could happen, take a look at yesterday's National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin. This was just yesterday. It's published by the Department of Homeland Security. The bulletin warns about threats from domestic violent extremists, DVEs for short. And they're targeted individuals with opposing views engaged in First Amendment protected nonviolent protest activity, which include those motivated by a range of issues including anger over COVID-19 restrictions, the 2020 election results, etc., etc., etc. So thus they now consider opposing views and the First Amendment protected speech highlighting governmental actions taken against other rights under the guise of COVID as a national security threat on par with ISIS or Hezbollah. These are now domestic terrorists. Threats of violence against critical infrastructure, including the electric, telecommunications, and healthcare sectors, increased in 2020 with violent extremists citing misinformation and conspiracy theories about COVID-19 for their actions. And this is what the bulletin is warning us. The Department of Homeland Security, as well as other federal agencies and law enforcement partners, will continue to take precautions to protect people and infrastructure across the United States. Now, mind you, as they treat our speech, our free speech, as terrorism, they fail to mention a word about Antifa seeking to overthrow the government and attaching governmental buildings, even Democratic Party offices. So some might automatically object to this concern by saying that the individual in question that's been arrested now used the speech to attempt to defraud people with a specific scheme. Thus, this would be speech that is buttressed by an action, namely, setting up a fraudulent voting number. Yes, tyranny will always begin with the veneer of justice and under the color of the law. I'm certainly not defending someone for doing this kind of thing, if he indeed is guilty of it. But what does it tell you that this is the one voter fraud indictment that the DOJ will be making while refusing to even look into any of the evidence of pro-Biden fraud represented in the state legislatures? What does it say that Antifa can destroy our streets every night and attack ICE buildings, yet the FBI is focused on Trump supporters saying things that might be misleading? So, in this case, the DOJ is not even charging the man with voter fraud, because indeed his alleged actions don't fit the definition of those statutes. Instead, they're bizarrely choosing to focus on the fact that he worked with other people and therefore might have violated the generic conspiracy against rights under 18 U.S. Code 241. And that title makes it a federal crime for two or more persons to conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution. That, by definition, every single governor and mayor should be arrested for conspiring to violate life, liberty, and property under the lockdown policies. Voting is very important, but it's ultimately the result of law and can be taken away under some circumstances. Unlike property rights and certainly freedom of speech. When can voting rights be taken away? And why can they? First of all, because we're not a democracy. We're not a one man, one vote, one person, one vote. We're a republic that's representative. So when can you take away voting rights? When the voting right or the ability to vote violates the laws and the rules and the regulations established under the Constitution for how an election takes place. In this last election, if there were whole states that changed the rules for voting in their state, but did so without following federal law about federal elections and bring it to the state legislature, which happened in at least 5 states, all of those votes gathered in that illegitimate process are then delegitimized. Do you understand that? There are rules to the way things should be done that are established in our Constitution. So the Department of Justice might have a legal case here from an extremely vague statute to the extent that it's constitutional. But the asymmetry in the prosecutorial discretion is bordering on a sadistic two-tiered justice system. If this were Singapore and the government evenly and scrupulously prosecuted every minor offense to the letter of the law, I'd be less concerned about this. It would be one thing if the FBI had evidence of a number of people who used this text hotline and declined to actually vote, believing that they'd already voted. But there was no evidence of such a thing in the indictment, which makes it peculiar that they're focusing on this, even if they can find a crime to charge him with. This indictment, mixed with the other martial law-like actions and indefinite deployment of troops, is not coming from a good place and is headed for a good, not headed to a very good destination. So a friend of mine from Michigan got a call from the FBI last week because someone told them he is an extremist. Call from the FBI because somebody reported him as an extremist. Now, if you're reading into this, something subversive, you'd be wrong to do that because there was no other information. He was just reported as an extremist. Remember the Third Reich, report your neighbors if they don't support the Third Reich. So can you still rigorously fight for conservative policies and not have to worry about the law coming after you as you act in accordance with the law? Then you need to wake up before it's too late. And don't expect the paragons of free speech at the ACLU to be there for you in your time of need. So this is what I wanted to cover with this tonight. And I wanted to talk about this because I thought it's very important. It's very important for us to realize what's going on in our country. And if you are not a citizen of this country, you live outside the borders of this country, you should take interest in this only in the sense that if the United States falls as the republic that it is supposed to be was founded to be, that's going to have tremors the world over. You pull the influence of the United States out of the rest of the world, your country, where you live, you are going to see a bigger problem than you think might even exist in your wildest imaginations. So the United States has to stand on its Constitution. And when it doesn't, when free speech is being violated like this, even if it's stupid, ridiculous, mean-spirited, misinforming free speech, it's still protected under the Constitution. What the Constitution doesn't protect is that people won't call you an idiot for expressing the things you express. And by virtue of the fact that there's nobody that actually voted and missed out on the real vote because of this guy's misinformation, it obviously didn't work. Most people thought he was an idiot. So, there is your country at work right now. They're not attempting to find out whether or not there was real fraud committed out there. They're attempting to silence one side of an argument. And that tells you what's happening right now. The tide that's coming in right now. And this is what has to be resisted. Oh, did I just incite violence because I said what President Trump said to his followers that day in Washington, January 6th? Stand against this. Fight it. Resist it. Oh, incitement of violence. Maybe the DOJ will be knocking at my door next. And maybe, to be consistent, they should knock on the door of every politician that's ever said, fight for your rights against this incoming guy or this guy that's already there. Boom. There we go. Folks, I'm sorry that took so long, but I thought it was very important. No, I'm not sorry. I'm not apologizing for my content in this show. I'm only apologizing if you came here for the Gnostic talk. We're just going to start getting into that now. And sorry it took me so long to get there. I thought this was an important point to be made. And we've got, about 14 minutes left of this show. So let's get into the Gnosticism a little bit. I want us to pick up where we left off yesterday. The last thing I said yesterday, we were talking about the Apocryphon of the Beloved. And the Bible must be shaken upside down before it's going to yield all its secrets. The priests have censored and clipped and mangled. They give us a celibate Jesus born of a virgin without the slightest stain of sexual contact, which is blasphemous nonsense. And William Blake said that in the late 18th century, early 19th century. And so not all men can receive this saying, says the Bible in Matthew 19:11, but only those to whom it is given. Jesus on the eunuch saying it in Matthew. So there's this invocation that's part of this. Now, in Gnostic literature, an apocryphon, as we already kind of covered, is literally a hiding away or a concealing of secret information. And so it's a secret teaching, usually committed to a trusted disciple by Christ after his resurrection, but before he ascends into heaven. And I brought up the example of Judas Iscariot, the Gospel of Judas, which was found to be part of the Dead Sea Scrolls, where Jesus went to Judas and said, you get these things more than the rest of the disciples. You get it. So, now, whether it's true or not, we don't know. It's one of the Gospels that was written. And so it was out there. And so it is, in other words, a hidden pedagogical moment of deep revelatory significance, these Apocryphons. The word is also related to what is also called the apocryphal literature. It's a class of ancient religious texts that didn't always make it into the canons of the Jewish and the Christian scriptures, but that are nevertheless considered important for the developments of both a kind of scriptural shadow hovering between the two traditions, and by calling any reflections here in this show an apocryphon, I intend to really invoke all of those meanings. Hidden, secret, personal, revelatory, not quite right, or straight, or orthodox. Maybe even a bit off-center and queer, as some people might use that word. I also offer what follows as a distinctly mystical idea here that I'm going to present in the ancient hermeneutical sense of that adjective, mystical. That is a radical technique of interpretation that reflects the altered state of any theory that's presented and reveals via the labor of human learning some of the deepest and most transformative meanings of the texts. Meanings that often go directly against what's the assumed obvious message or common sense or literal readings of the text, that have more or less captured the conservative ideologies of contemporary Christianity. So maybe some of the things we've been taught along the way, as I keep hinting at and keep saying outright, are things that need to be tempered by digging in a little deeper, turning your Bible upside down and shaking it out. See what falls out. So let me be very clear then. The goal of this apocryphon that I'm talking about is not yet another historical Jesus who can ground a public faith or who meets all the requirements of historical reason. Other scholars, far more qualified than me or the guys who wrote these apocryphons, have met that task for us. This is really different. What I'm after here resembles more a kind of historical koan. I talked about the K-O-A-N, a nonsensical riddle that Zen masters use to cognitively shock or to shut down their students into sudden bursts of enlightenment. This is what I want to do. I want to illustrate some absurdity by being absurd, as one wag put it. An intentionally paradoxical picture, a free active imagination, an openly heretical Jesus who can provoke new thought, self-reflection, revelation. Not in the 1st or the 2nd century Mediterranean world, but here, in the now, around us. And in the end, what I'm after is kind of a sexualized gnosis. Let's call it that. And you'll see where I'm going with this. An erotics of the gospel that can meet and learn from, on very deep, transgressive level, the erotic mysticisms of other climes and other times, particularly the tantric traditions of South Asia, the Himalayas, and China. I hiss and I write. Then through a specific tantric imaginaire, but one that is in the background here all the time, seldom making it into the page, usually secreted in the endnotes, but nevertheless fundamentally, gnostically, informing how I think, how I read, how I write, how I speak, how I opine. And the gospel, read and revealed through the Tantra, if you will. But this is not just a post-modern apocryphon. It's also an apocryphon of the beloved. Most simply put, the topic here is love. Love expressed and celebrated. Love censored and allegorized away by the orthodox. Love restored and healed through the serpent's gift of scholarship. Love finally transmuted and Gnostically realized as divine love. And why not? Ideally speaking, Christianity is a religion of love, right? It's also a religion of holiness on God's part according to theology. God is love. That's what John tells us in one of his very famous brief letters preserved for us in the New Testament, 1 John 4:16. But what kind of love is God? And more to my present interests, how is this love related to human interaction, human relationships, human sexuality? And more specifically, what about Jesus' sexuality? Did Jesus have a sexuality, or is that heresy? It's blasphemy, at least according to the Orthodox literalist Catholic Church. The Gospel of John speaks rather teasingly of this beloved disciple whom Jesus loved. That's what John calls himself. It's ho Matthias hon egapa ho Iesus in the Latin. The beloved disciple whom Jesus loved. That's in John 13:23, John 19:26, John 20:2 and 20. But who was this beloved disciple? That is, what sort of a person was the object of Jesus' most intimate and quite public love? And now we're talking about that agape love, that love that is in the Greek agape. It's that God love. It's that love we have for somebody. Can I say, I love my wife? And that's one kind of love. Can I say, I love my friends? It's another kind of love. So we're talking about love in this way. The canonical Gospels are not at all clear about what kind of love this is. Indeed, the Gospel of John, although quite clear that Jesus had a lover, goes out of its way not to tell us the identity of the beloved. Now, this loud silence, as we're going to take a look at, kind of explore, to either benefit or detriment, is itself highly significant. Is there a bisexual confusion there? I don't think so. Is there gender ambiguity and erotic paradox? I don't think so. Are those things themselves a kind of answer to the riddle, to our own Apocryphon of the beloved? Are we talking about, is the beloved disciple, which is John, but which we later have inklings through the apocalyptic gospel, there's so many words that all start the apocryphal, not apocalyptic. Whew! I couldn't think for a second there. The apocryphal books, the apocryphal gospels that talk about Jesus, that the beloved disciple was Mary, who was also his wife, with whom he also had at least one child. Is this truth? It gets into the Da Vinci Code stuff and all of that, but is there a truth that is deeper than the fictions that we've seen written about it? That's the big question here. And so, while we're looking at all this, we also have a quest for the heretical Jesus. The Jesus that doesn't fit the picture, the blasphemous heretical form of Jesus, in accordance with, or that fights against or goes against the grain of the literalist orthodox theology of Jesus. Biblical critics have often made a distinction between the historical Jesus and the Christ of faith, perhaps a kind of modern secular echo of the ancient Gnostic distinction between true Godhead and the lesser creator God or demiurge. Now, I have to invoke this strategy again here, not to arrive at historical certainty about what Jesus did or did not do. We've talked about that on this show before. What he did, even more speculatively, did or did not feel, but rather to posit a broad structural theory about the orientations. At once a spiritual orientation, a sexual orientation. Why does sex keep coming up? Sex is riddled throughout the Bible in its decrees, mandates. It's you can do this, you can't do that, all the way from the Garden of Eden up. So it's an important thing. So once a spiritual orientation, a sexual orientation of early and contemporary Christian memory and imagination. And through such a rhetorical strategy, we have to seek to isolate a series of tensions or paradoxes, and through them transmit this supposedly erotic energy and effect a shift in consciousness about these things. Now, it's not about, for me, proving a sexuality or a sexual orientation or an eroticism or anything like that. It's a mode of digging into what's really there. That's what I'm doing here. Now, this erotic shift in consciousness, I would suggest, is already implicit, if seldom made fully conscious in the collective work of the academics that are out there, which often function very much like a contentious, riven, but truly knowing Gnostic community. So seen in this imagined light, certain strands of New Testament scholarship can be read as constituting an esoteric version of Jesus that departs dramatically from that set of public or exoteric images that have come down to us in the conservative churches that we might be led to see at the present Christian moral debates involving such topics as sexuality, gay marriage, family values, as being terribly cruel and deep iconic charades that deserve both our wildest tears and our most mocking, knowing laughter. If ever there was a reason for the Gnostically inclined, for those who prefer personal knowledge over official belief being handed down to them, to believe that the world is ruled by a stupid and sadistic archon or ruler, this is it. And if there were ever a case to be made for the radical, essentially heretical nature of religious studies, it's right here. The quest for the historical Jesus is finally better named the quest for the heretical Jesus. Not because history is false and heresy is true, but because writing history is always quite literally heretical. That is, it's a deeply personal choice. It's a series of choices that one makes out of one's own deepest convictions, disciplined study, and still inarticulate intuitions, regardless of whether those conform to orthodoxy or religious authority. And often, of course, they don't do either. So, there we are for tonight. We're going to pick up tomorrow talking about how we're going to know them by their roots. Getting into this Gnosticism for Friday night. So there we go, folks. We're out of time. We got a bolt 23-hour break. We'll be right back here tomorrow. You guys sit tight. We'll see you then.